This smartwatch is a microscopic computer. Strapped to your wrist, it actively monitors your physical location and logs your personal health biometrics every second. This level of personal intimacy with time is a recent invention. Before 1400 BCE, time existed as an environmental condition. You tracked its passage by observing the shifting position of the sun or the rotation of the stars. This ceramic vessel is a water clock. It represents civilization's first major attempt to pull time out of the sky and trap it physically. By marking the inside, ancient engineers measured hours passing by tracking the steady flow of draining water. But water freezes, evaporates, and flows at different rates depending on temperature. Even with these physical tools, measuring time remained a vague estimate that varied wildly from one town to the next. For thousands of years, humanity simply submitted to time. It was an inescapable force of nature that governed when you worked and when you slept, entirely out of your hands. As medieval cities grew and vast trade networks began to connect the civilized world, relying on shadows and dripping water became a liability. Commerce required exact, synchronized schedules. Around 1280 CE, European engineers developed the first mechanical clocks. Instead of water, they relied on heavy iron weights falling slowly under the pull of gravity, which turned a complex series of interlocking gears. Looking at this massive framework of iron gears from Salisbury Cathedral, you'll notice there are no dials and no hands. These early clocks were monumental industrial machines installed in church towers. They didn't show you the time. They rang heavy bells to announce it. In the medieval era, time was a communal authority. The local government or the church owned the machinery, and the public merely listened to the heavy, echoing bells to know exactly where they were in the day. Those massive tower gears had a serious engineering flaw. Friction caused the mechanisms to drift, often losing or gaining several hours every single day. The solution arrived in 1656. Christian Huygens realized he could harness the consistent physics of a swinging pendulum to act as a regulator, forcing the gears to move at a strict, even pace. This single mechanical addition dropped the margin of error from several hours a day down to mere minutes. But if you look at the pendulum hanging vertically below the dial, you see the next problem. Because a pendulum relies on the strict downward pull of gravity to swing evenly, these accurate clocks were trapped inside large, stationary wooden cabinets. You couldn't move them without stopping the clock entirely. Humanity had achieved mechanical accuracy. We just had not figured out how to unchain that accuracy from our architecture. To make a clock portable, engineers had to remove its reliance on gravity and falling weights. In 1505, Peter Henlein solved this by replacing the heavy weights with a mainspring. Looking at this exposed mechanical gear movement, you can see how it works. By using a tightly coiled piece of metal to store physical energy, the mechanism powers itself as the spring slowly uncoils. This allowed the entire gear system to shrink down to something you could hold in your hand. These new pocket watches were intricate, expensive tools, meticulously crafted by artisans. They were carried almost exclusively by the wealthy. The mainspring shifted time from a public utility that you listened to into a piece of elite personal property that you kept in your coat. By 1904, early aviation required pilots to keep both hands on their controls, making pocket watches dangerous to use in flight. To solve this, designer Louis Cartier built a custom strap-on timepiece for the aviator Alberto Santos Dumont. What started as a bespoke tool for a pilot quickly caught on with the general public, popularizing the wristwatch form factor we know today. Yet, even on the wrist, mechanical springs still suffered from friction, minor temperature variations, and the daily chore of manual winding. The mechanical era ended in 1969. This vintage display shows the release of the Seiko Astron, the world's first commercially successful quartz watch. The engineering relies on quartz. When electric current from a battery passes through the crystal, it vibrates at an exact frequency. Those vibrations flow into a microchip. The chip counts them to step the watch hands perfectly, removing complex gears entirely. By harnessing quartz and a basic battery, we made perfect accuracy cheap to manufacture. It democratized exact timekeeping for the entire globe. Replacing heavy mechanical gears with silicon microchips eventually allowed us to wear full, complex computers directly on our wrists. These devices prioritize running complex applications, tracking our sleep cycles, and monitoring blood oxygen in real time. We started this 3,500-year journey by looking outward. We stared at the sun and the stars to understand our place in the day. Then we crushed heavy iron monuments down into swinging pendulums, coiled metal springs, and finally, microscopic pieces of silicon. We shrank the universe down to fit on our arm. Now, our timekeepers no longer look outward to measure the world around us. They look inward to measure us.